Hello, my name is Stefan Schwarzer. Welcome to this lesson about the relation between the human and the soil microbiome. In this lesson, you will learn to understand the relationship between a healthy gut microbiome and human health. You will learn about factors that influence the gut microbiome and the functioning of a bacterial therapy and its effect on the immune response system. The food system is dangerously tilting. We are what we eat is one well-known phrase. But how closely related are human health, food, and the agricultural production system? If we look at some statistics, we see that in all industrialized countries around the world, the share of people suffering from obesity is steadily increasing. This is a major subject for the health industry and the insurance companies. These rising numbers are surely alarming, as this influences many domains of our society. Out of the almost 8 billion people living on our planet, 2.1 billion people are overweight or obese. This is an incredible 25% of all humans living on Earth. This does not only concern adults, but starts already in very young age. Clearly, undernourishment is an important subject, but to put this in perspective, there are 0.8 billion people undernourished, which clearly are 0.8 billion people too much and is related to food security and other factors. But the thing is that there are almost 3 times as many people affected by obviously too much and unhealthy food. When we look at the infectious diseases on the left side, like measles, hepatitis A, mumps and tuberculosis, we see that thanks to increased hygiene and partly vaccinations in almost all countries around the world, the transmissible diseases have gone steeply down in the last 30 to 50 years, which is a really good sign. When we look on the right side, we see the immunological diseases, that is, diseases which are in strong relation to malfunctioning of our immune system. Here, the direction is completely the opposite. Diseases like multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, type 1 diabetes, and asthma, displayed in a red because we will come back to this later, are on steady and steep rise. Now, let's have a look at our cells and our body, which we call human. Clearly, most of us are somehow connected and attached to this body, which makes and defines us as humans. And this body is composed of incredible 30 trillion cells, which makes that complex living a human being. However, this view is somewhat one-sided, as actually most of our body is, one could say, non-human. In addition to these 30 trillion human cells, our body is composed of yet another 39 trillion cells from microorganisms, mostly bacteria. These colonize any place on and in our body, be it the skin, the nose, the mouth, the lungs, or the stomach. Anywhere we look, we find cells which are not human, and which numbers are higher than the human cells. So one could say, in contrast to the popular belief, it seems we are not so human after all. I am finally more than 50% not human. If we look even more astonishing or perhaps frustrating for some at the DNA, we find that difference even much more pronounced. 20,000 human genes stand here against over 1 million genes from the microorganisms, which makes then our body to be composed of 93% non-human genes. This gives us some food for thought in relation to the question, who am I? Or what does it mean to be human? The microbes are not there for simple amusement or just by chance. Clearly not. They fulfill important functions and are actually the basis for our living. Let's have a closer look at the why. If we take a step back and look at the evolution of life on Earth, we see that already 70 million years after the formation of the Earth, that is 3.8 billion years ago, the first life forms developed on Earth, which were, yes, bacteria. So the colleagues which colonize our body have quite a history they can look back at. 2.5 billion years ago, the first microorganisms started with the process of photosynthesis. 1.6 billion years ago, the eukaryotes, often multicellular organisms whose cells have a nucleus enclosed with a nuclear envelope. Plants, fungi and invertebrates, part of this domain, developed a bit more than 1 billion years ago. Vertebrates started 800 million years ago, and 450 million years ago, plants started their march onto the land. The Homo species, we and our ancestors, came into being only roughly 2 million years ago, a rather very, very short period of time within the evolution of life. This perspective is really important to see, as we can realize for how much longer time bacteria are on the planet and have developed, evolved, adapted to almost any corner and condition of the world. This map of life shows from a different angle both evolution and situation of life on Earth. These three major groups, the bacteria, the archaea and the eukaryotes, hold in essence all life on our beautiful planet. Important to know is that the life the most familiar to us, that is animals and us being part of the side branch, plants and even fungi, are only a tiny fraction of life. Most living beings belong to the other two groups, which have been on Earth for incredibly much longer times. Let's look once again at ourselves. I am human. Just along the phrase, I think, therefore I am, we consider the brain as the most important organ which steers and regulates our life. However, vis-à-vis, we find another organ, the gut, of around the same weight. It is interesting that some physicians already a few decades ago proclaimed that we don't have only one, but indeed two brains, one of them being the gut. The two actually are in very close and intensive communication, and the intestines are very much influencing the brain. Actually, so much that some scientists these days proclaim that we indeed have only one brain, the gut, as it dominates much of what happens in the brain and in our body. Let's come back to the part with the bacteria. We can find 1 billion cells of other than human cells in the gut per gram of gut material. This is a really incredible and unimaginable amount of bacterial life in our gut. The intestines are the most densely populated areas not only of our body, but of the entire Earth. And yes, there's surely a reason to this. Nature had time to develop its life forms and cooperation within over long periods of time. And what we find now is the result, one could say, from many millions and billions of years of research and development. So let's assume that this is an astonishingly perfect and co-evolution between animals, that is humans too, and the bacterial world with very important reasons. Our guts, its health and functioning, are affected by multiple factors, such as the kind of food we are eating, the stress level, our hygiene, chemicals in the environment, and if we are talking about agriculture, we clearly need to talk about pesticides, which we eat, with our food or drink, with our water, infections, the type and amount of pharmaceuticals which we take, the kind of birth mode, if a natural one or a cesarean, as the baby gets the right bacteria directly from its mother by the natural way of birth, if we were breastfed or not, the amount of antibiotics which we have taken, as they, as the name is saying, work against bacteria, and artificial or chemically produced food additives such as emulsifiers and preservatives. We know nowadays that many diseases are to a large extent influenced and or triggered by our gut in its well-being or not so well-being. Be it overweight, osteoporosis, morbus Crohn, multiple sclerosis, irritable bowel, cancer, diabetes, or multiple psychological and neurological diseases. These are just some of the illnesses that indicate that our gut is not working properly, and that we should look into the why and how of their origin and solutions. So, one important question to ask is, in how far the bacterial life in our guts, the gut microbiome, is actually a mirror of the bacterial life in soil, the soil microbiome. We know from the previous lessons how important a vivid soil life is for growth and health of the plants. And that through the current agricultural techniques used, we constantly destroy that diversity of life, with negative consequences for plant health and nutrient density. The same is true for our gut microbiome, through false nutrition, such as fast food, lots of carbohydrates, sugars and fats, and low amounts of fibers, with the use of antibiotics and so forth. We have reduced the diversity of microorganisms in our body, with consequences for our health and well-being. But the parallel image, reduced microbiome in soil and gut, goes even further, as there seems to be a direct relationship between eating less lively food and an impoverishment of our microbiome. We are what we eat means here even more directly that the reduction in soil life has direct consequences on our gut life. There's research showing interesting relationships between the way we cultivate our soils and human health. The Amish and the Hutterer have special ways in living as a community together. Both cultivate their soils, but very differently. While the Amish refuse to use modern technology and work their soil almost still in ancient style, the Hutterers use industrialized techniques of agriculture. Interestingly, only the Hutterers have a high share of people suffering from asthma. Knowing what importance the gut and its microbiome have for our health, scientists took small amounts of the people's feces and injected these into mice which had grown up in a sterilized, that is bacteria-free environment. After the injection, the mice were exposed to a multitude of allergens. What happened in the next phase? Only mice which received the feces of the Hutterers had cases with asthma, indicating that the Amish environment provides protection against asthma by engaging and shaping the innate immune response. Fecal transplantation or bacterial therapy, that is, transfer of stool from a healthy donor into the gastrointestinal tract for the purpose of treating the patient, is meanwhile an accepted and well-established therapy in medicine. So we can ask ourselves, when looking around me, what do I see? In this case, I see two hands. But if I sharpen my view in a way not attainable via my eyes, I would see these hands much differently and much more. We would see a multicellular, multifunctional, one could even say a multicultural being that is composed of a diversity of life, which is indeed at the base and even reason for its existence. Nothing within that animal would live without the work of bacteria. It begins on the cell level and goes up to the organs. It's a powerhouse of cooperations between many, many different microorganisms which work in collaboration, in symbiosis with the animal or human cells in order to bring this being to life. So we can and must speak of us and other beings as a holobiont, an assemblage of a host and the many other species living in or around it, which together form a discrete ecological unit. No life is possible without that incredible, rich, versatile and useful realm of microorganisms, which started to colonize Earth almost 4 billion years ago. So the question we could ask ourselves here could be, who am I? And why so many? And what does it mean then to be human? Thank you for watching this lesson.